We are back live this Thursday evening, and I have my good brother Awini Baba, all the way from Ghana on, and we're going to talk about leadership in Africa, lessons for the youth. Obviously, Africa suffers from a leadership issue. That's part of the reason why Africa is in the condition it is in today, and it's just not Africa. Pretty much globally, the Black collective were suffering from lack of sound, right, and proper leadership. And with that being said, the youth don't have a proper standard to follow when it comes to leadership. So, brother Awini, brother Bob is going to go in on that and give his insight on what the youth should be doing to put themselves in position to lead properly. Is all yours, brother Baba. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good day and good evening to the audience. It's a pleasure to be on here, and it's my honor to be in a discussion with you. So I was talking off air with Dynast, about this issue just before we went live. Is we seem to know what we're supposed to do, but we don't have a change agent.
Mm-hmm.
And a change agent is basically a leader. And when you study the African communities, okay, let me start by saying that the African community is not short of leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Let me be careful how I put this. We are not short of leaders. The question is what kinds of leaders are we churning out?
Right.
You see, and if we want to look at this and sort of derive lessons from this, we're going to have to look back in history and work our way up to see what examples can we pick from with our ancestors. And if we look way back, Africa has always had leadership, structures, right from the family level, going into the community and the broader society. We have not lacked, structure based on sound leadership. We have not lacked this. I want to state that the number one, there are so many ingredients that should go into a leader or good leadership, but the number one quality or motivation for leadership should be service. And
Absolutely.
Service meaning having a good heart and just wanting to for the betterment of your people. And I'm sorry to say that the current African political leadership class
are selfish.
Do not have good hearts. Let's put it that way. Selfish is even they pretty much hate Africa. That's why they are stashing their money in foreign accounts.
Right.
That's why when they get sick, they go abroad for treatment. So this backdrop, what we are seeing now, it varies from what our ancestors laid down. Our ancestors were not perfect. I hate to sound like someone who wants to tout Africa as the shining example and the perfect ancient example and so on. No society is perfect.
Well, let me ask you this. Hopefully we don't get away from the topic. What did our ancestors do specifically that made them, I guess, flawed? Or what mistakes did they make?
Compromise.
Okay.
But that's basically it. When you have standards and you You allow those standards to be compromised, then you're headed for a fall.
Right.
And if you look all over the place, you find that there's the slightest compromise opens up the system or the structure for further compromise until the point where the structure is just dysfunctional. You see, so compromise is for me is the number one
Uh
thing.
huh.
Uh, and I think that basically when I studying history and all, looking at Kemet, looking at ancient Ghana Empire, Sangay, the Kushite
Mali Empire.
empires. I learned a lot. What I have seen is that yes, the people there back then, even if they were compromised, they had some basic humanity about them.
Mm-hmm.
These are people who, they weren't perfect. We don't have to tout them as perfect, but at least they had this inner love
Right.
for their people. They may not have known how to express this love in the way that we might have expected them to express this love, but they did have a love to see their country progress. So it's no surprise that you see that in ancient times, Africa had some of the most elaborate cities.
Mm-hmm.
So it means that there was some investment going on. You look at Egyptian cities, and these are cities that didn't have rivals anywhere in the world at the time they were at their peak, and people used to look up to these cities as splendid, you know, and so on. So at least we must admit that the leaders that we had back then, you know, they no matter how compromised they might have been, they at least got one thing right: is that this is my country, these are my people, I need to make it better. The difference, however, with the current leadership of Africa
Yeah.
is that they they are not they don't have Africa at heart. They have no love for the continent. And these are people who should not be in power at all, you see, because anybody whom Africans put their hopes in. I have been to places, I've been around quite a lot. I've been all over Ghana. I like to move around a lot when I have the opportunity. I've been to places where, there hasn't been a single government development.
Mm-hmm.
People just reach, it'll take you several miles. Sometimes you have to stop and go on foot because the roads are not developed to these villages. I have been to these places. And these people, a lot of them, they're very nice people, welcoming and hospitable. You know, we're naturally very, we're naturally good people. I,
Yes.
I should say that. I mean,
Africans. Yes.
we
Yes, they
we
are.
we have a few bad eggs, for whatever reason, but generally speaking, our societal outlook and our culture has been one that was centered around humanity. At least we should give ourselves that much. So if we come from that culture, then what happened? That our leaders are now selling us out. What happened that our leaders, you know, began to betray their fellow Africans? You see,
Greed.
if you come up,
I
yeah,
said
if you
greed.
come up, yeah, uh, if you come up to just after independence. Okay, let me start from before independence. The most horrific genocide and crime against humanity, which we don't speak about. There's no World Day for slavery, but we have days for everything. Smaller things, less atrocious things that took place in humanity. Yet we have not. We have Black History Month,
Uh huh.
but that is. different. It gives a detailed account of our history and so on, but we need to set aside a day. In Ghana, we have not to digress, but in Ghana we have uh, Panafest
What's
that
that?
was called Panafest, the Pan African Festival
Okay.
that was meant to bring people from the diaspora to come home and have not only a physical connection, reconnection, but a spiritual reconnection, with Africa and Ghana in this case. And so we have tried to bring back, ourselves and remind ourselves of what took place. But the world and the UN needs to set aside a day for World Slavery Day. And this is a day that must eventually become a holiday. And it does not only need to be for Africans, it needs to represent people who have been living in servitude. And there are still people living in servitude as we speak, you see. So we need that day, you see. But before that unfortunate event took place, our people resisted. I have to put this out, is uh, it just didn't happen, as a result of, I know that some of our people were weak, they got corrupted, some of them sold out. This is something that we must be bold enough to admit, that we have bad eggs among us. And some of the bad eggs are in very influential leadership positions. At the time, there were kingdoms and empires. And some of the people within these kingdoms, the kings and emperors, were, they got corrupted. We have to admit this, and that's why I talk about compromise. And somehow some of them did not understand the level of the atrocity, because we did have, if you study, for instance, Senegal, they
Yes.
had a structured class system within the culture. So we had the higher echelons, we had the middle people, and we had the serfs or the servants, who were, in other terms, slaves. But that slavery to humiliate the human being, it was
Right.
just a structure.
It's called indentured servitude.
Yeah, servitude, exactly. So
Hmm.
somehow some of them did not think. Hello, some of them
Yes,
did
right
not
here.
think. Yeah, they didn't think that their people, or people, of the African continent, were going to be treated like animals. You see, so that's another aspect of it. But coming to after colonialism, Africa again showed very, very prudent and loving leaders like Nkrumah. I must say on the record that Nkrumah, no matter his mistakes, and like I said, there is no perfect leader.
Right.
Uh, he died without even having a house of his own as a
Well,
president.
Akuma, he was exiled, correct?
Yes, but he had enough access to resources. He died in Guinea. He had access to enough resources to embezzle the money and start some away, but he didn't. His children are in Ghana today, and they don't have anything to their name.
Right.
You
Not
see?
believable. Now, since
Yeah.
you
Mhm,
just brought up Guinea as the and then you can go back to the topic at hand. Since we're talking about lessons for the
mhm,
youth as far as leadership, isn't the
mhm.
dictator still in power in Guinea?
G- No, I stand to be corrected. But
Yeah. Okay.
no, I don't think so,
Okay.
because
No problem. Go ahead. Go ahead and continue about Kwame Nkrumah's family.
yeah. So his family is back. He was exiled, and in that time it was even an offense to even wear a T-shirt with Nkrumah on it. His books were burned. you know. So until recently, his children, did not feel welcome in Ghana.
Mm.
Uh, some of them have come back, and they're trying to revive, Nkrumah's policies and so on. And his policies were from a very, you know, loving standpoint. You see, and that's what we need to be looking at is the example that our political leaders after colonialism set for us. People not only in Nkrumah, but Thomas Sankara
Yes.
of Burkina Faso,
Patrice Lumumba of the Congo.
Patrice Congo, you know,
The guy from Mozambique that died in the airplane crash. Was he from Mozambique?
what's his name? Amil
Emil,
Cabral.
yeah, Emil,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. All these people, look, they didn't go into politics to fill their pockets.
right.
That's not what the standard was. That's not what the standard was at all. These people went into politics because they wanted to bring the right kind of change to Africa in the new age,
Hey,
if you will call it that.
real quick, Awini. Somebody in the chat room said Nkrumah's daughter was half white, which is true. Nkrumah's wife was Arab,
She was.
and she married a white man. Is that correct?
No, I don't think she's married to a white man. I don't even think she's married. I stand to be corrected, but she's not married.
Okay, okay. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because her full name is Samia Yaba Nkrumah. She's not married. I don't. She's not married. But to make this distinction, Nkrumah was he was a smart man. Now you remember, Sadat of Egypt. He was president of Egypt.
Right, right.
You know,
Now,
he's he.
was he the one that was assassinated?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but his mother was Sudanese. His mother was a black Nubian,
Right,
and
right,
his
right.
father
Because
was.
Sadat looked Nubian. So yeah, this is the one I think he was
Yeah,
assassinated.
yeah. But I think what Nkrumah was trying to do was to marry southern or sub-Saharan Africa with Saharan Africa and to link
Oh,
the two. You see, people don't understand. And Nkrumah knew Fatia from way back in school when he was schooling in the United States
uh-huh.
and so on. So sometimes, and this is why we have to look at things critically, because some of the unions, and this goes way back, some of the unions were to bring about more unity. I'm
Right.
talking of marriages,
Mm-hmm.
you see, and I looking at it critically as a man that was, but he also fathered a child with a Ghanaian. This is something that is not said, with a Ghanaian woman.
Makes sense. It happens. It would make sense.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. So exactly. So we have to be careful when we look at this, because whether we like it or not, Egypt is part of Africa, right?
but the issue with it is, do Egyptians, do they identify with being more
But you,
Arab or being African? That's the issue. I don't think they identify being
Egyptians,
African.
Egyptians are Africans. They identify with Africa,
The
and
one, the
during
one,
the
the
Nkrumah's
ones
time, there was.
I've heard from, they identify more with Saudi Arabia or the Middle East than they do Africa. That just in my personal
Well,
opinion.
there are two types of Egyptians. You have the Arab Egyptians and you have black Egyptians.
Right.
There are black Egyptians in Aswan area, for instance,
Uh-huh.
who still identify with Africa. You have a lot of them in the United States. One of them is all over the media, trying to, challenge the racial category that he has been put in the United States. His name is Mustaf Hefni, and he has been classified as white in the United States. And if you see the man, he is clearly a black man, still alive. He's still going on his campaigns. So his name is Mostaf, Mostaf, Hefny, Hefny.
Okay.
Uh, and he's leading a campaign to shed light on, the blacks in Egypt as we speak and who
Mm,
come from there. You see, so we have to look at it carefully. But Egypt is Africa. If the
right.
Arabs arrive later on and so on, it still doesn't change the fact that Egypt is Africa, and we have
Right,
our
right.
people
So,
there.
I mean, we realize Egypt is Africa, but the current day Arabs that happen to, reside in Egypt don't claim being African. Now, that's what I was saying,
Not
but continue.
Well, not all of them, honestly, not all of them.
Okay.
We not all of them. So, for instance, if you go away from Egypt, Gaddafi identified with Africa.
Correct. Correct.
You always have a few people for whatever reason. We even have East Africans. Some of them don't identify with Africa.
Right.
I've
Well,
met I've,
exactly. Ethiopians, the
black
Somalians.
people.
Right.
Black people, they don't identify with Africa. Why? Because people are ashamed of being identified. Even you can come to Ghana and other typical African, they don't have that political consciousness, because to identify with Africa is to have a political consciousness, to think
Right.
that you belong to a continent, which is a political and geographical space that represents your interest. So people who are not matured politically do not understand what it means to claim Africa. And
Right.
people will have a problem with the African identity. Many people are confused. You go all the way to Southern Africa, and you call people mistakenly call the Bushmen. I don't call them that. Uh, I call them the San,
Right.
the San of,
Yes.
you know, these people don't also identify to be Africans, but they're clearly
Are you
African.
serious? I didn't know that.
Yeah, some of them.
I didn't know
Some
that.
of them.
I didn't know
Some.
that.
Why? Because no, but we have to understand where they're coming from. Why? Because this African concept is relatively new. It's not indigenous. People before the post-colonial movement, the concept of one Africa was not really entrenched at all.
Right.
And we have to understand this. So it's people like Nkrumah, and others who insisted that we have a unified continent, and that's why when you go to Addis Ababa, where we have the AU headquarters, his statue, it is only Nkrumah's statue that is standing there as the forerunner for African unity. And he said we must have it now, not tomorrow or the day after. We want it now.
Right.
And so let us begin working on it.
Uh,
So
Let me
the
ask
the
you this real quick, Awini, while it's on my mind. Since we're
mhm,
dealing with
mhm,
leadership, when should a leader
mhm.
uh, show humility and know when it's time for them to step down if they're not leading effectively?
Yeah, this whole
And the
issue
reason
of
why I ask that is
transition.
because you have a lot of African leaders. I mean, I don't know if those Santos are still over in Angola, still in power. You have a lot, your boy in
No,
Rwanda, you have a lot of leaders who refuse to give up the seat.
Santos is out
Oh,
now.
Santos is out? Okay.
Santos is out now.
Okay.
Yeah, but you see, for me, I don't really want to go that trajectory, because I don't really believe that regime change is what do you mean, a good thing for development per se.
Okay.
It's good to have regime change. For instance, I'll give you an example. The German chancellor has been there about 12 years now. This is her about third or fourth term,
Right.
Angela Merkel. And the German constitution allows that. She can go for, I think, as many terms as she wants, as far as the people keep voting for her.
Right. But what if they're
You
proven to
see?
be ineffective? I know
But
you.
that's another question. Who is the one doing the assessment? For instance, I have seen people try to paint Paul Kagame as a dictator and so
Uh-huh.
on and so forth. I wouldn't go that trajectory. Why?
I
Because
wouldn't either.
uh, he has clearly won elections. Why? What is the problem? If the Constitution allows for him to run for as long as he wants, and people keep voting for him massively, then it must be that he's doing something good for them. But my
Correct.
problem, however, I don't. My problem with the leadership issue is Africa has not yet determined its direction. We have not set up systems that we devised from our own, collective culture. And people will say, African culture is so diverse. It's not too diverse. We have
Right.
very similar cultures. If you read Bob's book, The Cultural Unity of Africa, he makes this point quite succinctly that you have a strand that runs through most African cultures, unifying them. So my problem with it's not necessarily. I'll give you an example.
Go
The
ahead.
United States went from voting for change, and I would say change because Obama, you know, represented, African people, African American people, so it was a good thing. Now, immediately after Obama, you have the complete opposite of change
Right.
ruling. You see, uh, I don't know what it means to have regime change that is detrimental to the progress that, for instance, Obama made. I'm not necessarily an Obama fan but I'm just trying to say that regime change does not necessarily guarantee progress.
Somebody
And if
somebody
we,
somebody in the chat room said, and I've heard this consistently. President Kagame is helping the West steal Congo resources, and from my understanding, Rwanda was funding some, I guess, uh, military group. I can't. What's the word I want to use? Some rebel group in the Congo, like M23 they were called or something they
I,
were called. What do you think about that?
I have heard those, accusations, but I don't. You know why I don't believe it is that Congo is also a country on its own. It can police its borders. It can protect its territorial integrity. I don't see how, and if it's a claim, I don't see why he has not been unmasked and why uh, the Congolese government has not been able to put a stop to it. I don't really. These are all rumors. I'll give you another example.
Go
When
ahead.
Lumumba
Right.
was brutally, savagely murdered,
Right.
uh, the West, Belgium, and the United States and other countries, they picked Mobutu Sese
Right.
Seko
Right.
to come and take over. The man was practically a dictator. He ruled for as long as I can't remember. you know,
Yeah,
some
that
20
was the point. That's why he was picked.
exactly. So
Same thing when Thomas Sankara was killed. They put in
exactly they put Blaise Compaoré in charge.
exactly. Uh-huh.
See? But the question is, so why is it that we didn't hear this loud outcry about Mobutu? It is because he had the backing of the West. And normally, what I have learned studying, uh, geopolitics and so on, when you hear a lot of noise about a president, don't go with it. Do your own research. Gaddafi was accused of so many things,
Right.
and
Of course.
his people fooled into working with their own enemies to remove him. Today they are regretting.
Yeah.
So no, normally, if we understand people who have access to the media and who control the media, we would understand that when you hear a lot of noise in the news, it's not poor people who are sponsoring it. It is people who have vested interests who are financing this, and they always have their reasons. It's not necessarily about the rule of law and good leadership and all of that and regime change. America is advocating regime change. Have they touched Saudi Arabia?
Of course not.
So what's the purpose? So we have to be careful not to go along with these people. We have to make our own analysis based on our own evidence. And I wouldn't go with the flow and flow with the tide and accuse people of what I don't know. What I do know is that whenever you hear a lot of noise and tarnishing of image about a leader, it's not necessarily coming from poor people. And those are the people who really stand to benefit or who deserve to benefit from the change. It usually comes from powerful people who are not getting their piece of the pie. And they are the ones who will rain hell and go to all the big media houses who work with them to paint a bad image about a person that they cannot control. So, uh, as far as to go back, as far as leadership examples, we have had many of them, especially if we don't want to go too far back. After independence, Africa was had so many selfless. The same with Thomas Sankara.
Yeah.
Sankara was accused of stashing money in Swiss accounts and keeping money in his house and home and so on. When he was
Yeah, but
assassinated,
I think the death blow, or the reason why they went after Sankara and Lumumba, is they tried to leverage that they were communists. That's why they justified going after them.
China is communist. Why don't they go after China?
Because they're non-black. Because you got to think about it. And then another thing too, if they were communists, why didn't Russia send in support? Because if you notice, anybody that's claimed to be communist, whether it be the Vietnamese and all these other countries, Cuba, another one, Russia supported. But for some reason, Thomas Sankara and Patrice Lumumba, who I'm not sure yet, it's maybe somebody in the chat could correct me, who I think they claimed to be communists at one time. Russia didn't help them when the West ended up invading.
Russia, I remember Russia did send help to Patrice Lumumba.
Really?
But
okay, I didn't know that. Okay, I didn't know that.
It wasn't effective against a joint force of Belgians and Americans from that distance. You see, so basically, I don't think that African leaders were stupid. They were just trying to look at different systems in the world and see which one works better. Because when you come, when the genesis of these things, when the Europeans were forced to leave, a lot of them from Africa were forced to leave Africa. They immediately left and created a leadership gap, vacuum. And so the leaders of Africa, who were the forerunners of change, they immediately stepped in to fill these gaps. And so a lot of them did not want to continue with the status quo. Otherwise, then what was the point advocating for independence? They wanted self-determination. So they decided to look at the various systems in the world that they could apply to our circumstance in Africa. Uh, and they looked at a lot of systems. I think that what really failed our early post-colonial good leaders was just that a lot of us were still pretty much ignorant, and we were turned against them without even knowing, and we made it look as if it was their job alone. Them alone had the job to do, and we were just there to benefit. That's not what it's about. We have to take responsibility. We have to learn to take responsibility for our welfare. It is not in the interest of anybody in the world that we are doing well but us. So, and when we put people in charge, we have to have systems to ensure that they don't abuse their power.
Let me ask you this, Awini. What are your thoughts on someone like Nelson Mandela, who the West loves Nelson Mandela, but many people thinks he sold out and that he should have went the Robert Mugabe route. How do you feel? In fact, how do you feel about? Let's compare leaders like we'll say a Robert Mugabe and a Nelson Mandela. What are your thoughts on those two people?
Yeah, well, initially Mugabe was also a darling boy of Britain and the West. You
Mm-hmm.
know, but then Mugabe was very clear about the land reforms that he wanted to see take place, and he wouldn't. From what I understand, there was what is called the Lancaster Agreements that Britain was going to uh, compensate the the British settlers, for the land that they were supposed to give back to Africans, which belonged to Africans in the first place. So that didn't go as it was supposed to go, and Mugabe was forced to do what he did. But you see, I've been to where Mandela was imprisoned and all, on Robben Island.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the South African situation was, a bit different. And like I said, it depends on how much leverage that Mandela had.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that Mandela wanted to do things more progressively, incremental change.
Okay.
So he did not go the radical route of implementing land reforms, but he did give indications that the issue needs to be looked at,
Right.
you see. And so that is what Jacob Zuma, and Julius Malema and others are championing right now.
I think Jacob Zuma's full of shit. If you ask me, I mean that's just me personally. But go ahead.
Yeah, but I don't know his approach, but obviously he's not hitting it the way Malema is hitting it. Uh, Julius Malema has a more straightforward approach to it. Uh, Malema is practically saying, you took land without compensation to black people, so
Right.
black people are going to take back the land without compensation.
Which,
That's what.
which I mean sounds fair to me. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair deal, because if you stole from me and people are saying, that was way back, but what's stolen is still stolen, and
Right.
people claiming to be good people and all reformed and it's a new age, you how would you feel still clinging on to something that is stolen,
Right.
and claim to be a good person, and and love everybody, and it's all, it's kind of insulting to our intelligence, actually, because
Right.
if you study history enough, our people were in Spain. They drove our people out of Spain.
Right.
In the whitening of Spain, blacks were driven out together. The Jews, the Hebrews, they were scattered all over that place, going even all the way to England and parts of Europe. They were all driven out, you know. So if you look at the history, whenever a people, come into the reality of their issue or become more powerful, they do have the right to take back what is theirs.
Right.
Doesn't matter if the crime was committed 1,000 years ago or not. You see, so
Let-
between Mandela had a more incremental approach. Mugabe more, radical about the land. But the land issue cannot be neglected.
Correct.
It cannot be neglected, and it has to be addressed. And that is what is boiling in South Africa right now. That is what is boiling in South Africa right now. The land issue. Land redistribution, and the reforms have to take place. You see, so That's what I think about the two approaches right there. But in all honesty, I think that Robert Mugabe should have handed over by now. In all honesty, I think that he should have had systems in place to you know relinquish power and take a rest.
I thought no,
You know,
I thought his wife's in power now. Is that true or?
his wife's not officially, she's not, but who knows, because he's old. But I'm saying this as an African. I'm not saying this as coming from the West, who is calling for him to step down and so on. No, we have to do things in the interest of Africa
Right.
first, not in the interest of what somebody else wants for Africa. You see, because I don't. Nobody has the moral right to point at Africa. But everybody has raped Africa and committed worse crimes, to the most atrocious crimes against humanity that we're not permitted to speak about. People talk about the Jewish Holocaust in Europe, but that was nothing compared to what Cecil John Rose did to Africans
Mm-hmm.
in southern part of Monomotapa. So we no people outside Africa have the right to point fingers at us
Not and
because they
if you want to get deeper, so you got Cecil Rose, and you also have the Belgium leader that was in Congo. What's his name?
yeah,
Hold
I
on.
mean he
He
was
was
under
part of
Leopold. Yeah,
Leopold. Yeah.
leadership of King Leopold and all of those atrocities. People offer mere apologies. They don't want to be sent to, people don't want to be punished for their war crime, but they're still prosecuting Jewish Holocaust war
Right.
criminals as we speak,
Exactly.
wherever they find them. But in our case, we don't we don't merit those rights. We have not looked at ourselves as people who are equal to everybody. And that is not intentional. It is because our leaders of today have accepted a substandard position and they have compromised and they have given the same people who are doing those things to us, they have given them the moral high ground to judge us. And nobody has the right to judge Africa except Africans. We are the only ones who can judge ourselves. Right to judge ourselves. But nobody can claim to have clean hands and come and judge us because we know the history. You see? So we need to look at system carefully. And immediately after independence, the independence drive, a movement, wind that blew over Africa gave birth to selfless leaders who
Mm-hmm.
were really looking to take the continent somewhere.
Let me ask you this. At one time, Jomo Kenyatta did serve time in prison under
Mhm.
colonialism. But why weren't leaders like, I guess, Jomo Kenyatta, Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, why weren't they given the Thomas Sankara and or Patrice Lumumba treatment? What are your thoughts on that? 'Cause I know they were
What
pretty
were
progressive and I guess somewhat radical as well.
hmm Yeah, you see, that's why I said it depends on the approach. You see, Julius Nyerere took a more indirect approach to the problems of Africa. And he was approaching it from the educational standpoint. That's why they gave him the title Mwalimu, which
Mm-hmm.
means teacher, and he basically looked at the system as a system that needed a lot of education to bring people up to the standard that Africa needs, and so on. And some of them also had good protection, by
Right.
the way. So, And it wouldn't. You know that Robert Mugabe is a staunch Catholic, Roman Catholic,
True.
and he goes to the Vatican and all that, but he still has a Pan-Africanist stance. You see, so it depends on the connections of the person. It depends on, that Robert Mugabe has uh, uh, lived. He has escaped several assassination attempts.
Absolutely.
See, so some of the East African leaders, and like Julius Nyerere and Kenyatta, they also had their own adaptive systems, and perhaps the behavior of the country was also positive towards the change, because there's nothing more fearful than if you have the support of. It's difficult for the enemy to eliminate you, because when they do that, they're going to bring about more discontent, and when they do that, they cannot replace the leader with a sellout, because the people are going to revolt big time.
But see, the thing is, that's not the case with Mobutu and Kapare and other puppets that were
Yeah,
in place.
yeah. That's why I'm saying, you look at Mobutu. Mobutu came, and there are always tribal issues involved in this. You see, he came with his own entourage, and they sort of just whisked uh, 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 Patrice Lumumba aside, and he has this ethnic support and all that. You see, so the ethnicity also has a role to play in that. From what I understand, uh, Kenyatta's tribe is the largest in Kenya. You see, they have
He's is he Kikuyu? Yeah, he's Kikuyu, correct?
Kikuyu,
Yeah.
and that's probably why Uhuru Kenyatta would have still won the election against Raila Odinga. And
Hmm.
Raila backed down. He went to
Well,
court.
yeah, but they still have to actually have the election though. That which is hilarious.
Yeah, but the main opposition has backed down. So what is he
Right,
going
but
to do?
but for some odd reason, even though
Yeah,
the opposition has backed down, they still have to have the election.
they, they have to. But there are people who said it's still not going to work in his favor, even if he had run.
True.
You see, yeah. So sometimes we have to step aside and look at the issue away from ethnicity, because there are a lot of ethnic, reasons why people would throw their weight behind a person, even if the person is not serving the interest of the general population.
Right.
And we have to step away from that if we want to progress, and look at a leader who is a father of all, and who wants to see the country just and the continent progress. So Africa has not had a bad record in terms of leadership. We have produced women leaders. You go to Rwanda, has the highest number of women in politics in the world.
Okay.
People again
But
would.
let me ask this question. In fact, some people in the chat room had a couple questions. Question number one,
Mhm.
Mr. Kwesi, he wanted to know, what's your personal opinion on the current president in Ghana? Like, how do you feel about him? What kind of job is he doing?
Well, it's first of all, you have to understand that I am an Nkrumahist.
Okay.
I support Nkrumah's policies 100%. So I'm not really in support of this privatization
Mhm.
going on in Ghana since Nkrumah got assassinated.
Right.
Uh, Nkrumah got assassinated. Our national assets started being sold off
Wow.
to foreign. Yeah, that's what's going on. And currently, our electricity company is sold out. It gave it's a concession, but that's practically a sellout, because the concession is for 20 years. And so a new owner is going to come in and take possession of a strategic national asset like
Mm-hmm.
Ghana Electricity Company, and they are going to run it. They say it's for reasons of efficiency and they want better management and so on. But from what we know, the government of Ghana is owes the electricity company millions and millions of Ghana cedis that they are not paying. So the government of Ghana uh, is the number one defaulter when it comes to payment of electricity for electricity that it uses, that it's not paying. And so all of this goes to affect the effectiveness of the electricity company. The electricity company is not doing that bad at all. We used to have
Mm-hmm.
blackouts for reasons of generation. It wasn't mostly for reasons of lack of the grids and networks, but it was just issues of how or the power, the quantum of power generated in the country. But we have tried to diversify and so on. So I I am not in support of privatization
Okay.
for various reasons. If you look at power generation, you look at UK. The UK does not allow its power to be fully privatized. The UK does not allow that. You go to Germany, Germany does not allow the private person to run a utility company like an electricity company because these are strategic assets that need to be regulated in a way that affects the country positively. So if you privatize something like even in the US, there are limits to where the private man can go.
Yeah, yeah.
We are not saying that.
I would say this. As far as power, and I'll speak specifically uh, here in Atlanta. It's you have
Mhm,
only one option, and so what they could do is
mhm.
they could set up a monopoly and they can jack up the prices, which they do, and they have no competition. Which sucks.
Exactly.
So,
Hmm.
so sometimes
Yeah,
I think it needs to be
but
privatized if there's more than one company, and they compete.
we exactly we are not against that. We are saying that you don't sell what belongs to Ghana. You give them the space to come and set up their own. That's what we're saying.
Okay.
So if you want competition in the system, open it up and give incentives for private people to come and start their own power companies. That would be good for competition. But you don't take a state asset and sell it out, and then the private company has monopoly and it can jack up the prices, and all we can do is complain. You see, that's the reason. So he's doing okay for the ideology he represents. I
Okay.
don't the whole ideology I don't support.
Okay.
So I can, mhm.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go finish your thought, then I have another question for you.
The whole ideology is not my type of ideology. The party in government is a capitalist party, strictly capitalist, and they also have social programs, which is good. They brought back free SHS, which existed during Nkrumah. During Nkrumah, it was actually free from day nursery to university. My father went to university for free. He went through the school system for free. So it's nothing new, but uh, they brought it back. They brought back the senior high school free system, which is good. They're doing some good things, but my problem is that the ideology is not the whole privatization thing. We're not against privatization. We're just saying that don't give state assets. I'll give you another example. Ghana Airways to have an airline.
Is Ghana Airlines is it
It's sold out. It's not
yeah, slow down,
operational. They sold it out. Why couldn't we run it and still allow the space for private companies to come in and compete with us? There's nothing wrong with that. That's my problem with the approach. And Nkrumah was not against private companies. He was just saying that the state also has the right to do business. and we are going to level the playing field, and you can come in and compete with us. But where you sell away, so all the pilots that used to work there, where do you want them to go now? And so on. Which system is going to absorb them? And we talk of creating jobs. If government has a strategic position, it has access to funds, it can actually take bonds and invest in big businesses. And if government does not do that, then where are the jobs going to come from? They say the private sector. But the private sector in Ghana is still pretty much non-formal.
Right.
It belongs to people like me who don't have the startup capital to do anything big here. So that's my position. You were going to ask a question.
Yeah, the question was in the chat room, what can we do to stop the divide or the rift? I see Africans in America and they look at me like the enemy. Is getting better. I reach out, but it's always a rift, specifically Nigerians. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't honestly. I don't know where this is coming from, because we in Ghana here, we welcome our brothers and sisters from all over the world every time, and there's
Absolutely.
no problem. So where is this coming from that when we go over there, there seems to be a problem? I don't understand it. I've heard a lot of yeah, I monitor YouTube a lot. I've listened in on conversations, where some Nigerians were talking about growing up as African kids in America, and how the African American people treated them as children. And they made certain claims, and what I can see is there's a lot of ignorance. And I wouldn't blame a child for echoing the ignorance of the adults, because
Right.
that's what we're doing. Those of us who are adults, the diaspora, whatever we echo, the young people, children, they're going to pick that up, and they're going to make that into a reality. So all these the people calling each other names and all of that, I don't know what that's about. That's so low. We are way above that, and we shouldn't go that trajectory at all. It has no benefit to our collaboration. Uh, so coming together like we're doing on these platforms, it helps a lot.
Right.
But we have to understand that yes, we are all one people, but we experience different challenges in life. Honestly, we experience deprivation generally, but the nature of the deprivation is different. You see, so you see a lot of African people when they go to America or wherever, they work. Some of them live there, but they send a lot of money back home
Right.
because they're trying to help people back home, and so on and so forth. So
Hello.
hello.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
you're back. We got you. We got you. Real quick, let me give some shout outs to people in the chat room. Chanel, I see you. I know Junk Power Video was in here. Eric Quessy, Woni Bio, I see you in here as well. Thank you for coming. Global African for Tribalism, all the regulars that support. Thank you so much for coming in. I really, really appreciate it. If you're new, make sure you like the video. Make sure you share the video as well. Go ahead, Awini. Sorry about that. Awini. Awini. Hello. Can you guys at least hear me? Awini. Well, I think we lost the brother. Awini. Okay. I don't know if we lost Awini or not, but he's yeah, I don't know what happened to him. Hopefully he wasn't abducted by aliens. Let me shoot him an email real quick. But everybody, thank you so much for coming out. I really, really appreciate it. The support. I leave for Senegal, like November 3rd, I believe, something like that. So I will be going black depending on how the Wi-Fi is. I will probably be going black for like a week, but make sure you guys follow me on social media. Hold on, let me send him an email real quick. Hopefully he responds back. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this show. Man, we were just going in. I mean, this is kind of a long topic. We can't do this in one night. So, I mean, we'll probably just have to pick this up part 2 probably on Sunday. I will be back on Saturday morning, 8 o'clock or 8:30, because I might sleep in, but 8 o'clock for sure. That's Eastern Standard Time with the sister Nana Ashanti discussing some topics. So, if you guys are up early, come on and hop on and support us and check us out. Let's see if he responds. He hasn't responded. You know what? I will. In fact, Kashmir, did you see you didn't see the show that I did with the Liberian brother? You didn't see it? Kashmir? Because we actually spoke on an election in that show. We spoke a lot on Liberia as far as just its history, the Black Americans who were involved in, I guess, settling Liberia. So we spoke a lot on that. So just go check out the old video. We shot it on Sunday, so it's on there. So yeah, all right, you guys. I think Awini is the Wi-Fi might have went out. So make sure you guys follow me on social media. Search for Uhuru on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, and Facebook. Also go to dynastymir.com. Go to search for Uhuru.com. And then also go to Amazon.com and search your name, Dynasty Mir, please buy the books. Guys, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on. Sorry about the about Brother Awini falling off, but we'll be back on Sunday. I guess either his minutes ran up or the internet got slow. So again, we'll be back on Sunday. People who contributed to via the super chat, thank you so much. Every penny counts. Also, please contribute to Awini's GoFundMe. I will post that link in the description box. Please contribute. Guys, till next time, the temperature's dropping, so I know the coffee tanis, okay? That is made for spring and summertime fun. When it's winter, it's not winter here in Atlanta, but it is definitely getting cool. I got to break out the lumberjack situation, the flannel. I gotta break this out. It's nice and warm. So till next time, Dynasty Mir, the Kafitan Don, please like, share the videos. Also, make sure you guys are, if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you guys are subscribing to this page. So if this is your first time coming on, please subscribe. So till next time, Dynasty Mir, the Kafitan Don, peace.